All right, so before we go into the gym and get down into the nitty-gritty details of the squat, I want to just go over a couple of main points here. And I'll try to make this as quick as possible so that we can really dive in, okay? So this is a full body slammer, dude. Like, this is gonna make you grab for the walls when you sit and pee, if you do such things, if you aren't careful. So let's talk muscles. The prime movers of the squat are going to be the quads, your quadriceps, your glutes, and your adductor magnus, which is actually the only adductor that externally rotates. Now, the way that you set up your squat and which version of the squat that you do will affect how much each muscle group is worked and which one would be the main focus. For example, we'll break this down deeper once we go into each version, but like the low bar squat is going to be more glute heavy than a front squat. You know, like a front squat is definitely gonna work your quads a lot more, you know? So setting the squat up differently, or the way that you maybe place your feet, or how wide you stand, all of those little things will affect which muscle groups are gonna be worked more, okay? So today, we're gonna go into the gym and we're gonna break down the low bar squat. I'm super excited about this. It's my personal favorite version of the barbell squat, and I have a lot of opinions about it, so I hope you're ready. Let's go.
Said that she let me a smile, yeah. I got no number to dial, yeah. Drip in the house, drip on the couch. If I am tripping, I drip on the couch. Pull me around, everyone down. I will not send you a sound. I will not send you a sound, yeah.
If you wanna be amazing, or the better place, draw lanes around me. I seen it from the ground.
So let's talk about a major factor of the squat that you may not know. The whole goal of the squat is to take the weight, come all the way down, and all the way back up, all while keeping the weight over the center of your foot. Okay, so this is where the slight differences in like low bar versus high bar, they do make a slight difference. Because in high bar, the weight is already over the center of your foot. Whereas in low bar, it's behind it, so you have to lean forward a little bit more to get the same result. Now, low bar, my favorite. So low bar positioning is going to be shelved right on your rear delts, okay? And with this one, you are gonna have a slightly more forward lean with your torso. It's natural. Again, this is what keeps you balanced because the weight needs to stay over the center of your foot. So there are pros and cons to each version of the squat. The low bar squat's gonna have a little bit more stress on the low back, but I feel like one of the pros to low bar is you can adjust your feet if you don't quite have the mobility to do like a narrow stance squat. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about step one. Before you even squat, one of the first things after your cardio warm up and after your priming movements and all that kind of stuff, check out my Instagram if you need some motivation for that. But the first thing you're gonna do is you're gonna set up your hooks and your safety bars. Okay, and how do you pick your height, right? The main focus of picking the height is for your safety bars, you don't want them to, you don't want to touch the safety bars at the deepest part of your squat. You want them to be just below that so that if you need to let go of the bar and bail, or set the bar down on the safety bars, that's a possibility for you. And we'll talk more about bailing later on. The J-hooks. You don't want them too high, but you don't want them too low, okay? If you put them too low, then you're already gonna be wasting energy just unracking the bar because you're gonna be doing like a partial squat just to get it up off the hooks. If you do it too high, then you're risking having to tiptoe in order to get out of the range of hitting the hooks, and that can be super, super dangerous. I've actually tweaked my back doing that before, so I don't recommend it. You want to make sure, basically, and the best way to do this is to test it with an empty bar, which you should be doing warm-up sets with an empty bar anyway, but the best way to test this is with an empty bar. Go underneath, get your setup, okay? So if you're doing low bar, get that low bar right in the position that you want it. Take a deep breath, a bracing breath, which we'll talk about here in a second. And you're gonna push your hips back in space just a little bit, just enough to kind of bring you, so you should have to get underneath the bar a little. And then once you have your core braced, you're just going to extend your hips, and that small amount of height adjustment should be enough for you to unrack the bar and take it safely away from the hooks so that you're not running into any of the rack or the hooks as you try to squat, okay? Step one, we got our height set. We know for sure that this is the place that we want to be as far as our safety bars and our hooks. So what's next? Well, now we need to get underneath the bar and make sure that we know exactly where we want it to sit. So let me show you where I have my low bar set. Okay, so as you can see, just sitting right on top of my rear delts, there's like a little shelf back here. If your rear delts aren't big enough to hold the barbell, you can also adjust the way that your elbows flare so that you can kind of put a little bit of pressure on the bar to keep it in place. Low bar is going to require some shoulder mobility. It actually requires shoulder mobility, thoracic mobility, and ankle mobility. And let me explain why. So you want your hands to be as close to your body as possible so that you can keep your shoulder blades pulled together and your elbows tucked in, because keeping your shoulder blades together and your elbows tucked in activates your lats and helps keep your spine nice and rigid so that we're being really safe, okay? So that's first and foremost, that requires some shoulder mobility. If you have issues coming back this way, you can try to widen your grip or even maybe slip your pinky up underneath the bar, and sometimes that'll help people kind of work that out. Ankle mobility, because in the deepest part of the squat, the knee is gonna go over the toes. So if you don't have the ability to dorsiflex, which is like if you were trying to point your toes at your face, if you don't have good dorsiflexion in your ankle, then instead of your knees going forward so that you can get down into the squat, what's going to end up happening is your torso is going to shift forward to try to make up for that. Because at the end of the day, your body is going to try and move the weight in whatever way it thinks it can. Okay, so then we have an issue with too much torso leaning forward, so that when you come up, you might feel more discomfort in your low back, or you might be trying to like good morning the weight up and have your hips shoot up first. There are some issues that come along with that, right? And it's about trying to be as effective in moving the weight as possible. That's why we want perfect form. We want perfect form for safety, of course, but it's also, we want to make sure we're working the right muscle groups. And, okay, so once you find out what's comfortable for you as far as where the barbell sits on your rear delts and your hand placement, please be aware that if your wrist breaks and that is uncomfortable, there are two things you can do. You can just actively try to keep your wrist neutral, which sometimes that's all you really need to do is actually just pay attention to it. If you don't have the mobility for that though, I recommend widening your grip a little bit and try to keep that from happening, okay? Next, foot placement. Now, This is probably a big question for a lot of people who don't have a lot of experience in squatting is, where do my feet go? Because a lot of times we've heard of if the knee goes over the toes, it's bad, don't let that happen. Here's the deal. It's all about mobility, okay? So if you have the mobility to be in a narrow squat position and you can get all the way down and it is a properly formed squat, cool, you should do that. As long as you know how to connect to the glutes and the quads and know that you're working the proper muscle groups, go for that. Now, if you don't have the mobility to get down into a narrow stance squat, then turn your toes out. Externally rotate the hips. This is gonna open you up a little bit and it might allow you to get a little bit deeper. The key here is you can go as wide or as narrow, or you can be toes facing forward. You can have a 10 degree, 15 degree, 45 degree external rotation. Whatever works for your body. The key is you wanna make sure the knee is tracking over those first and second toes. You need to find a foot placement that's gonna work for your body. Now, if you have super long femur and super long tibia, getting into a narrow stance squat, that's just not gonna happen. At least anecdotally from the people that I've seen that have very long legs, it's not a possibility for them, and it could be just mobility issues, but at the end of the day, they squat more efficiently and they feel better in their squat with a wider externally rotated stance. You just have to play with the foot placement and figure out what works for you in order to execute that properly. All right, so now we've got our low bar positioning on the back. We've got our hooks and our safety bars in the correct place. We figured out where the width of our hands can be comfortably without causing too much discomfort, which, disclaimer, it's gonna be uncomfortable, okay? Having a barbell with weight on your back is not supposed to feel like, oh yeah, I'm good, I can hang out here all day. It's not gonna be like that. It's gonna be uncomfortable. You may get bruising. I remember whenever I first started barbell squatting, I had bruises on my back and, squatting multiple times. It was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable to try and get my shoulders and my arms in that position sometimes. So understand that along this journey, you're going to have to just get tougher and you're gonna have to work through some of these discomforts. It's like the same thing as playing guitar. I've been playing guitar for 20 years. And when I first started playing, my fingers would hurt so bad. And then after, a year or so, suddenly it was, now I have these calluses and I can play as long as I want. And it doesn't hurt that bad. It is the same thing. As long as you are doing your squats properly, the little bits of discomfort and bruises and things that come along the way are totally normal, okay? So we've got our foot placement, we've got our hand placement, we've got all of that stuff set up. Now we gotta talk about getting the bar off of the hooks, okay? So I'm gonna tell you, if you're taking more than 3 steps to walk out your barbell, you're doing it wrong. You're wasting a lot of energy, okay? So main focus here is when you go to put that bar on your back, and every set, even your warm-up sets with just the bar, you need to execute them properly. So you get underneath the bar, you get your grips, you take your deep breath, you unrack. Your feet at this point should already be at least very close to the position that you're gonna have them in when you squat, okay? You unrack, you take 1 step, you take a 2nd step. If you need to, sometimes I've seen power lifters and bodybuilders do this. They kind of like squish a bug underneath their shoe while the bar's on their back. And that's a cue that I've heard is like you're screwing your foot into the ground to create like stability. And that's okay. But if you're unracking and then you're kind of doing this jazz, that's a lot of wasted energy. That could be 1 or 2 reps that you're leaving in the tank just because your walkout is taking so long, okay? So a lot of times people with a wider stance might have to take one more step to kind of get their feet in the right position. But for the most part, when you go to walk out the bar, before you even unrock it, your feet should already be in the general width that you're going to be squatting in. Okay? Now, you've got the barbell and you're in position. You're in the perfect place to where you have the safety bars underneath you, but you're not going to be hitting weights on any of the bars in the rack. You're ready to go. You're ready to squat. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to brace your core. Now, let's talk about core bracing because it's not just a deep breath. It is a deep breath into the diaphragm, and then it is a pressure, an intra-abdominal pressure of you pushing. And this is why bracing your core is easier with a belt, because you have something that's kind of there to resist. It doesn't mean you have to have a belt to learn how to brace, but I do recommend getting a lifting belt if you want to help you learn how to brace. Okay, so it's in the diaphragm. That means if you're taking a deep breath and you're feeling it in your chest like this, if your chest is moving, then you're not bracing your core. You're just taking a deep chest breath, and that's not going to help you. Okay, so when you brace your core, you should feel your stomach expanding in all directions. So, big, deep, core bracing breath, right? And now you're here. The next thing I want you to think about before you start lowering the weight to the ground is full body tension. So I want you to imagine, when we're taking our NASM personal training certification courses and stuff, they talk about the human body being a kinetic chain. So I want you to think about from the tips of your toes all the way to the top of your head, I want you to think about it being a balloon of energy, okay? And if you have a tiny hole anywhere in the balloon, you're going to be losing energy. And that's exactly how I feel about loosey-goosey muscles. It doesn't matter if you're trying to focus on the glutes, your back should be tight. You should be gripping the bar. You should be squeezing your lats and activating your lats. You should have full body tension from head to toe. And once you learn how to really get tense and brace your core, I guarantee you the amount of strength that you will have comparatively is going to blow your mind. I know it did for me the first time I actually learned how to brace and be tense and not just kind of like hang on to the bar here. And it's natural to like only think about your legs when you're squatting, but you have to remember that your body works as one piece. It is all together. So that kinetic chain, it is important that you keep tension in every portion of your body so that you can execute the squat as perfectly as possible. All right, and then last but not least, let's talk a little bit about bailing, okay? If you don't have safety bars, I would recommend that you practice with an empty bar, or at least a very light bar, how to properly bail. I think it's easiest to bail on a squat at the bottom of the squat, coming down nice and low and then getting out from underneath the squat. If this is something that really makes you uncomfortable, I really, really recommend having safety bars. It's changed the game for me. I feel like I can push myself so much more knowing that, these safety bars are gonna be here for the time that I fail, because I'm gonna fail. And I didn't fail on a squat for a very long time because I never felt comfortable pushing myself that far because I didn't know how to bail on a squat. So you have to be safe and make sure you don't ever want to bail on a squat this way, okay? It's always about getting out from underneath the squat. Personally, safety bars, I tend to just, if I'm gonna bail, I come down, I start to come back up and it's not going anywhere, I literally just sit back down and let the bar roll onto the safety bars. Okay, so that's a really important part of if you're gonna be pushing yourself, you need to know how to bail properly so that you don't hurt yourself. Okay, so I'm gonna take you through, now that we've covered all of this, I'm gonna take you through a couple of repetitions here of my setup. Sweet. One last thing, when you're re-racking the bar, try not to look. I know it seems kind of weird. Try not to look side to side. That can kind of send you a little topsy-turvy depending on how heavy the weight is. So try your best to just walk straight forward until you hear the clank clank and then drop them down on the hooks. All right, guys, if y'all have any questions about any of this, please comment below, hit us up on Instagram, let us know how you're liking the series so far, and if there's anything that we didn't cover, we are more than happy to get back to you and make sure that you know everything that there is to know about the low bar squat. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe and share. Y'all are the best, and don't forget to get your shit together.
If you wanna be amazing, or the better place, draw lanes around me. I seen it from the ground. Talking outside of Queens and the rings of rainy, the cameras in around. Just take the check.